Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today I've got a special video for you guys. Once again, I was able to get a nice little interview with some of the guys over from Arms Trade Tycoon tanks. Today, once again, we're talking to Lars, Ericsson and also Alex Loubenets about their project and where it's developed from. If you remember before, we did a few videos looking at the trailers of Arms Trade Tycoon tanks and also another interview in the past. So let's see, what has evolved from that point. And also, they are planning to do a Kickstarter for this game later this year. And if you want any more information when it comes to the game itself, make sure to check out their Discord. There'll be a link in the description and also in the pinned comment. I'm personally really looking forward to this project. I think it looks awesome. So as always, enjoy the interview and I'll see you next time.
Yeah, well, I can show you just as a quick refresher maybe for your subscribers that, you can see we want to have a few countries, not just a single country that will be available. Germany is one of those. Well, France, of course, is another one on the list. Well, United States. And as you can see, also the Russia and the Britain. The game is still about tanks, so we have not changed that a bit. It's still a tycoon, and this screen has not changed that much. But I mean, since we have a bit limited time today, I want to, we don't want to make a huge, very long, of course, interview. I want really to focus on the things that I think might be most interesting to your subscribers, and they're I think they're really cool to show. So when it comes to the research and all this kind of components and modifications that we're talking about, well, we have expanded it, of course, a lot. And if you remember how it looked before, now it looks completely different. We have refurnished it a bit as well, made it a bit more compact. But so this is the way it's most likely is going to look in the demo. Finally, you have plenty of information there. It's a description about what it is about, what kind of component. It's something we call slots where you put things in. And some numbers, of course, the attributes that it gives you, the resources that it takes, and also the information about the compatibility, basically what can be combined together, what hull, what turret, and so on. So we have also decided to have 3 different type of technologies. One that gives you both the components and modifications. Modifications, it's a smaller part, right, that you plug inside the component. Then you have technologies that focus solely on the modifications, so it gives you more of those, and they usually come with a sort of better array of attributes. And then you have something that is, it doesn't really give you any components or modifications, but they allow you actually to do engineering. And we'll come up to that, how that will work. That module is working now. I think it will be interesting to show. Then let's see what else is pretty new. Well, the crew gear is also new. I don't think we had it last time. So what we want to make available for the player as well is to choose limited number of crew gear for the crews. And that will also eventually affect the attributes of the tank. If you're aware, if you have been like a World War I fan, for example, this, the face masks was a big thing, to protect from the splash and so on. So and you'll see quite a few of those along the way. The crew gear is distributed between different research trees. Like this one sits in the turrets and so on. And also we included the ammunition now. So you don't just choose the gun or the machine gun, but you have also to make a decision on what kind of ammunition do you want to equip, your vehicles with, and that will be based depending what kind of a position you expect the tank to meet. So a solid shell naturally works better against the armored opponents, and then if you want to fight better say the infantry, then let's say canister shell is something better.
So are you still going with the idea that you're producing these vehicles for the country? Will you get kind of I suppose the class is like a schematic. Like will they like send you like demands of what they want out of your vehicle, or is that going to be completely up to you?
Well, it's actually worked both ways. You can make a design first if you kind of anticipate something, right? If you have a vision, that based on the doctrine of this tank doctrine of this country, you expect that kind of design to be favored. Or you can wait actually for the contract to appear, and when the contract appear, they specify in the range what they expect to see from the tank. If you have the components available, you can try to make a design specifically for the contract and see how that will go. So it depends on how quick how flexible you are, how well you can meet the demand. So that's both ways will work. So that's the research. I mean, it's, as I said, I mean, for just for Britain, I think we counted 140, 150 different components and modifications. That's just for the World War I era, and then of course we expect to have roughly the same amount for the other countries. So it will be some space to experiment and play with. And now the engineering. So this is we did quite a lot here, to be honest. You don't see it now, but you'll see it in a second. And the main decision that we decided to eventually phase out the 2D and start moving the game towards the 3D.
Oh, okay. That's that's pretty awesome, actually.
Yeah, that's a big change, right?
I'm guessing are you going to have like a zoom in and zoom out feature as well, or is it just going to stay on the same plane?
Like
oh,
this?
There we go. Yeah.
Yeah, there you have it. I mean, if you want to look there you go. So it's when we actually tried out several versions of this, and when we came up to that, it was sold to us directly, because you get so much more atmosphere that actually you are producing, you are designing. So I guess we will eventually phase out most of the buildings and they will be done in the full 3D. But now we can actually show you how the engineering process will work in, I would say it's pretty close to how it will look like in the demo. So here you have several slots, right? This modification slots that I mentioned before. And you can see they come in different flavors and in different types. So when you want to, if you want, of course, you can go with this component straight away and you can use it in your design. But if you don't, and most of us, I think, won't, you can tune it further. And the way you do the first approach is you plug in those modifications in the tank. So you choose what is available from you and what you would like to have, and you plug them inside. So there, and we say put it here. This, let's say I put this one or that one. Well, some of them are still placeholders. We're working on that. So nice looking white toothpaste. I don't know. Yeah, so that's sort of the process, and you can see it's for some modifications you will have a list of more than one, of course, and eventually this list will grow. So so there you go. So for example, this is something that you like, right? You can take the whippet.
So this is basically where you would build your tank, then, right?
Yes,
yeah.
This is the way you're going to build the components of your tank. And then in another stage, you can combine them together in the designs. You can actually combine the components together to get finally the tank, because the same component you can use, let's say the hull, you can combine it with one type of running gear or maybe with another type of gear, so you can reuse it. That's the idea. So there we go. We play around. We decide what is what works, what doesn't. Or let's take this one for example.
And so do you get these modifications? Do you have to research them through the other system you showed before, or will some of them be stock? And yeah, okay.
I mean, most of them you will have to get from your research trees, but some modifications you are going to get from the reverse engineering. So it's like you're stealing from your fellow. Yeah, I don't know if fellow, but applies from your
competitors.
Exact competitors. And yeah, you can focus on both activities, or you can focus on one. It's completely up to you where you think is the most profitable way. But I suppose most of us will actually work with your own tree. Let's see, what do we have? This is, let's go the machine again. This is a placeholder for the time being. So I think you can get the system, right? How the modifications will eventually work. So that's there we go. We'll put it here and so on. And then there's another layer that is the technologies that I mentioned previously. So we go to another tab, and with the technologies, what we want to allow or want to emulate, we want to give player possibility to sort of use different technological solutions to still change the attributes. So if we go here, we have assume that we have researched all of these. So we have the reinforced frame, some steel plates, and so on. And what you see is that, besides that, of course, it leads to some increase in resources and time it takes to manufacture. It also opens you additional special attributes for actual change. So let's say we take this one, right? And it says, crew safety, right? So if we go to the crew safety, we see that, okay, now we can actually have a possibility to add additional engineering points in the crew safety attribute. And we can see like hull reliability. So we go reliability, we go there. And you see the others are, at the moment, they are locked because, we didn't pick up that exactly technology. If we don't like this, we can go, say, for the protection. And then we go for protection one, and we see that it's actually now the sort of the width, the attribute that is responsible for the width of the armor is available. So we can invest our points in there. And different hulls, I mean, it's worth to notice that different hulls will have, of course, different number. They do have different number of both slots for the modifications and slots for the technologies. So in this way, we want to make it possible that, let's say the earliest components, they still have a potential to live longer because they have more potential for the upgrade, for the modification. You can clearly see it. Let's say if we take the Mark I hull, you see it has all 10 modifications, while for the Mark 8 it has only 5 of those. So that's yeah, that's the idea. And then you do the same stuff. So you play with the turrets, the one that you have. You have different ones, of course. There, we can say this one. Yeah. And goes the same for guns. You can zoom still, so it all works well. And for the other major components, this is the machine guns, for the engines, and for the running gear.
This is way more in depth than I anticipated, by the way. Like just the amount of stuff you can actually do to each module. I think it's kind of insane, actually. In a good way, obviously.
Thanks. It is. Well, it almost drove us insane to come up to that. Yeah, I hope we can keep the sanity at least until we finish the game. But one thing to point here is that you see that, for example, for the engine, you don't see the graphical change, right, when I do this. So this is something that we're experimenting, because clearly making all of that in 3D, making all of them appearing in 3D, that's a very big toll on the cost and the time. So we're thinking, how should that be done in the sort of most cost-efficient way? At the moment, we are sort of more leaning towards the system that, the big stuff, like on the hull, the structural components, most of them be represented in 3D. But the stuff that is internal, like if you take the gun, for example, right? We take this one. Let's take the news. Make all of this appear in 3D. That will be that will put quite a high toll on how this thing works. So we will probably going to combine both approaches and see if the community accepts that, and if it works. And it also, if we can relax that requirement that everything has to be in 3D, then we naturally allows us much more choice when it comes to what kind of modifications are possible. I mean, take this one, for example. Like, we can have enlarged cylinders, we can have another camshaft, casing, the pistons. If you do all of them in 3D, that will be more complicated to fit them all in different types of engines, right?
Yeah, I think the compromise is fine. Like, if as long as, like, externally everything looks like when you finish the vehicle what you built, I don't think too many people would have an issue with it. There's always going to be like that 5 or maybe even 1% who want to see everything, really well modeled. But then, I mean, what I say to those people is, well, money isn't infinite, and I hope they understand that.
Unfortunately not, and we are sort of experiencing that quite a lot, actually. So and to be honest, I'm one of those in 1%, because I would love to see everything in 3D, and but I know the cost of that. So that's the way. So there you go. So we can have you can see that, of course, for each component they have unique sets of modifications, right? It's naturally what you put inside. Say the running gear is completely different from what you put inside in the gun, and so on. But some stuff we still make it possible. We make them, some modifications are still 3D. So it's the same principle, right? The big things they show, the smaller things we keep them as 2D arts. And so that's. If you've been following us, then you probably recognize some of these components from the tanks that we showed. So they're completely decomposed in the smaller parts and available for players to experiment with.
Looking at this whole system, I'm looking at the bottom where obviously, we talked about last time how the system's going to work with, how many resources you have and how much you input, into each part of it. Are you going to be able to build like more than one thing at once? So let's say you want to build a hull, a turret, and a primary. Will you only be able to do one, or will it depend on how many resources and how many people you have there?
Yeah, that you start with one. But it eventually, as you say, that will depend on how much you developed exactly. In this case, engineering lab, right? You see that guy. He's eager to build more, right?
Yeah.
Those guys, they want to build more. And that, of course, that goes hand in hand. That, I mean, the further you go in the sort of game progression time, then the more need you'll have to attack different customers at the same time, or adjust several things at the same time. Otherwise, it will be too late. The tempo will go higher and higher. So yeah, and that goes the same for the research as well. Initially, you have, if you remember, you have only one research tree, research line, but then you'll be able to expand that capability, that capacity, so you'll be able to do, say, research 2 technologies at the time, or 3 or 4. For the production, that will also be applied. You will have a possibility to produce several models, of course.
There was another question as well. This was brought up by a few community members. So generally through history, when it comes to a lot of companies, like if we have a look at something like BAE Systems, over their time, they have bought out many different businesses, or and become industry leaders by kind of amassing all of these technologies on top of each other. In the game, will you be able to in a way, or in a sense, like, let's say you have like a competitor who is building other vehicles, but maybe, I don't know, they're down on their luck or whatever, would you be able to buy them out and then get their technologies or their research instead of just the reverse engineering stuff?
You mean acquisition, right? The company
Pretty much,
acquisition. Yeah. We discussed that, and I think we start, well, one step at a time. So first comes the reverse engineering. And then, depending on the feedback and depending how it all fits in the game frame, we might have possibility to do the acquisition as well. The only sort of limitation is that, and this is not going to change, is that you are going to have one factory base, right? You're going to have one base for the game. You're not going to have several site locations that you will manage. So the way we anticipate that acquisition will work is when you acquire the opponent, if that will be in the game again, then you get those juicy technologies, you get the designs, and then you get something we call holdings. So that's each country will have like secondary holdings that will give you certain bonuses. So I hope you see what I'm getting to.
Oh no, I completely understand. I think it's good. One of the problems I've seen with a lot of games is you have, like, Spore's a great example of this, right? Where you have that initial building stage and that like small like planet that you're on, and you get to create what you want. And then when you go to like the next stage, which is kind of the management stage, a lot of people kind of lose interest, because you end up not actually building anything. You just end up like managing, all the stuff from before. And I think it kind of becomes a lot monotonous to a lot of people. So yeah, I agree with like just having one base. I think that's a great idea.
And then we also, we have some good examples from the other type of games. But I mean, they follow the same trend. Let's take the XCOM, right? And all the new, the remake of the old good XCOM series. I mean, the most of that it's one base, right? You develop one base. You can have some activities around the world, but it's one base, and I think it works. It's a good formula. I think we apply the same. So yeah, so that's this, and then the reverse engineering. I think we can show that as well. So again, here, this is like the home building, the home window. You will amass the tanks from your competitors. Right? In this case, let's say you have taken your hands on A7V, and we have also made it complete in 3D. So that's yeah, it's a funny tank, right? Funny design, a box on wheels, but it was actually quite advanced to its time. So the way this is going to work, even though it's called reverse engineering, it's actually a bit more like technology tree. So each tank will have technologies for each of these groups. So you have a hull, And you see that if you go for to reverse engineer the hull technology, in this case it's Lanford, right? Then you will acquire this component and these modifications. You go for the turret, and you go for this top superstructure and these ones, and so on, right? So you have the gun, you have the power unit, and well, consequent bonuses, so to say, the machine gun, and the running gear. And when you go for it, you get this, and then you can use those in the design. So there will be only one little split. The components that you get from the reverse engineering, those ones we have not, decided completely if you can engineer them further or not. This is something that we have to balance out and see how that works. But the modifications, they will end up in your list of available modifications. So if it suits the type of the slot, then you can use these things in your native components. And and eventually, I mean, you get other tanks, so you can do the same procedure there as well, and enrich your list of modifications that you have. So that's this. And as I said, I mean, we are there's quite a few changes. We can briefly show some, I think. So, for example, this one, you can see we can completely redesign the world map. It's we felt that it has to be more of this, armored, stylish type, right? The metal, and I think it suits much better. Well, okay. I remember there was a comment somewhere about the highlight, that this highlight doesn't really match the year. Sure, that is going to be different. We have really undermined British Empire at the moment. But well, let's say it's alternative history path, so why not? There's a lot of things happening on the diplomacy screen as well. So we have redesigned that. You see, you have a description, then you will have information about the technology, the economy of the country. The tank corps information is really expanded quite a lot. This is actually what I was talking about, that when you anticipate the design, you have to look what kind of doctrine the country has adopted and how it applies, how it will what it means in the campaign and the battles and so on. And depending on that, you can deduce what tanks to make. Or if you know history, then you kind of know that, let's say, in this case, Britain will not be maybe so favoring the light tank design like the Renault FT-17 tank. That's another way, bypath for the historical path. We can, when this thing is more, operational to show, I think we can show that as well. But there's some quite change done to this.
No, it looks really nice. It's when it comes to the doctrine. So obviously, you talked about before how the campaign is going to work. When you move through eras, obviously using Britain as an example, there was, obviously the First World War doctrine, which wasn't really a doctrine, but it was something. And then in the 20s and 30s, they were, arguing over which doctrine to use. And then obviously by the late 30s, they decided, will countries have different doctrine over time, or will that be kind of standardized to each country?
Well, the way we want to see this actually, and to implement this, is that they will have their own doctrines, because up to at least the Cold War, there was huge difference in how they apply the tank warfare. And the way the doctrine works, it actually does two things. The first, it kind of it basically makes the demand of the country, what kind of tanks they want to use. But then each doctrine will have a certain number of slots, or what we call tactics. In this case, for example, you see that this doctrine right now, it has 4 slots. And the tactics, they will come in different favors. So you'll have mobility tactics, you'll have support, the assault, and the defense tactics. And tactics, they will work during the battle. So in this case, for example, you see that this strategic mobility, it applies 20% to the sort of, this icon stands for the transportation of the tank, and to the repairability, how easy it is to repair certain components of the tank. So that will count in the battle checks. And of course, if you go to Germany, they will have their own sets of tactics and own bonuses and own demands. So that's yeah, and that kind of the another reason why we chose to do this is that if you make it this way, if the doctrine affects the sort of the contracts, the demands, but it also affects the battles through the tactics slot. It is easier than to make a sandbox, and that's what we ultimately want to do. Because next time in the sandbox, you can, you guess, you make a different combination of the tactics, and out of the sudden the doctrine is different. That's that's the idea, and we'll see how it will work. As I said, there will be a lot of balancing and trying and error, but that's.
When I look at this, I see so many moving parts, like with the modifications, the technologies, the doctrines. Like there's so many percentage numbers, and the depth of this game, even right now, is all I've got to say is incredibly surprising. I'm very impressed, if I'm honest with you.
Thank you. Thank you. I just hope that we have not overexceeded that. You never know, but it is a game a lot about actually making your own design. So we really need to try to strike the balance between making it possible to affect that many attributes, but not making it too many, right? And hopefully that we will strike the balance. So that's this is just some preview of some of the buildings that we have. But as I say, we are moving towards the 3D, so we will replace those buildings where we see that it should be replaced. So the next building that is ongoing, so that's for the design, and hopefully we have the design module ready within say 3 weeks from now, 2-3 weeks. So we can show to you how actually you make the tank, right? Not just the components, but the tank. And also, of course, the next idea is to update the construction hall, the factory, this one. So at the moment, this is a combination. There's some, you can see some actually lighting issues. But we want to make that also fully 3D. And that gives us really kind of cool features that we can show. That is that in this case, when you choose, let's say, the Whippet tank, it will be Whippet standing here. So it will not be static, and they will be, you can really play so much. You can have them standing there with a different level of different level of assembly as well, and that will be changing as the more you kind of produce, the more assembled they become. It becomes much more fun. And there's also some simply technically things that becomes much more easy, we notice, when you play or when you do everything completely in 3D versus the combination of 2D and 3D when it comes to lighting and so on. So I think that's what we really wanted to show today. As I said, hopefully in 3 weeks we can show the design, and then sort of gradually we will be wrapping it all up, so it will not be like what we're showing now, a bit aesthetical, but we are moving towards the actually playable demo. The ATA for that, or the ATA for the Kickstarter at the moment, that's end of September, beginning of October. That's what we want to achieve.
So are you still on the same idea that you want a playable demo for the Kickstarter, basically?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yes. I think it's very important. We've been looking at what's happening in the Kickstarter, and I think that's that will really something that you want to show to the potential bakers, that it's you want basically to give them a try, right, before they pledge, and then let them decide if they like it or not. So that's the idea.
Has there been any changes to, obviously we didn't really look at it last time, but you described it, but the kind of testing area? Or have you been focusing on like trying to get all the production stuff working first? Like the area kind of in the top right of the base, where the field testing or whatever you want to call it. Yeah, that.
Not yet. I think that will be actually the area that we will focus last, because we are working in a sort of parallel lines at the moment. Different team members are doing different stuff, but the main focus right now is to get the design complete and also complete in 3D, the production. And then I'm jumping a bit ahead, but the next milestone will be connected to actually the battle checks, not the testing not the trials on the factory ground. How it works when the tank gets sold. When it gets sold, it gets assigned to a regiment, and then when these regiments, when they participate in the battles, World War I, there will be a lot of battles, right? Then how that will play out. I don't know if you saw that, but we have shared some of the pics from the map showing the unit chips and how the map looks, how the chips looks. So this is sort of the next milestones after the production design, and folding it together with the contracts.
Oh, that's wonderful. That would be really nice to see. Like it's I definitely think the game right now, compared to what it was before, it seems a lot more fluid. Where before it felt like, you had like each area and that was kind of it. But now, obviously, you've talked about how whatever you're producing, you're going to see before you, the whole 3D aspect. It's looking awesome. Like, it's looking really nice.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, and as always, if there's any questions, please just drop by those questions on the Discord, or we can. We haven't sort of restarted the Instagram and the Twitter. Trying to post regularly there as well. Please follow, check, ask us. We'll be happy to answer.
I'd like to thank Ambrosius McClellan, B. Young, Battling Bacon, Blackie, Chris Giltnane, Conte Baraka, Daniel Stanton, Elove Goat, Jay Wilt, Martinez, Trigger Hippie, Universe, Eugens Terry, and also I'm Devilish and Samuel Slick for supporting the channel.